You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Her explosive next move. Daniela Elsa writes at news.com.au, Harry's wife's explosive next move. The Duchess of Sussex is working on a huge money spinner, according to two well-spaced, I think it should read well-placed, sources, and it's said to be explosive. I'd put some reasonable money on Harry's wife, the Duchess of Sussex, being a cracking poker player, given how closely she has been keeping her cards to her chest. I wouldn't. She'd have repeatedly many tells. She'd be a shit poker player. For months now, there have been claims the Duchess is set to launch some sort of digital business. That again. Of which there are fewer publicly available details than there are about US nuclear armaments. However, now the possibility of another career option is gaining steam, with prospect that out there, doesn't make sense, somewhere in a Google Doc in a land far, far away, the 42-year-old could be working a book. While there has been no confirmation or any self-tooting press releases from publishers, still in recent weeks, two veteran and highly regarded royal biographers have separately claimed that Harry's wife may be working on an autobiography. Well, I don't think that's too great a leap of imagination. Why? 1, it will create money for her. 2, it will allow her to control people. 3, she will receive fuel by way of people's responses. 4, she believes that she's the most fascinating and interesting person on the planet. 5, she still has issues as a consequence of people criticizing her that she will want to address through her book, both in terms of the royal family, the media, and the public at large. And therefore it will provide her with an ideal platform to nullify those threats to control, to assert control over the readership, draw fuel, and deal with money, one of her favourite residual benefits. First, Tom Bower, author of last year's Revenge, Harry's wife, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, appeared on the conservative UK channel GB News saying, "My view is that the Duchess is writing her memoirs and it will be a huge money spinner." Then came royal historian Andrew Lowney, whose biographies of Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson and Lord Louis Mountbatten and his wife were nothing short of devastating, and meticulously researched, it must be noted. He has now told the Daily Beast that not only Harry's wife but her other half, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, both have more books coming. Well, if it's anything more like the dross that Harry pumped out first time around, we'll all just have a jolly good laugh as there's more Todger-related shenanigans. What's the noise you can hear from Monty's shit show? The sound of two sets of hands vigorously, cathartically, and ominously tapping away at MacBook keyboards? It just may be. More likely, Harry's wife will be sat there dictating it to somebody. Writing it out would be too much like hard work for her. Remember, she's fundamentally lazy. Previously, there have been a number of reports suggesting that Harry's deal with Penguin Random House was for multiple books. And while Harry has already treated the world to 400-odd pages of him laying bare his psychic wounds and traumatized Todger for the world's literary delectation and emotional voyeurism, Harry's wife has yet to cross that particular Rubicon. Yet. Because, really, the Duchess penning some sort of book, looking back at her royal stint, feels like all but a fait accompli, right? And if this is the case, if the former actress is writing a tell-all, let's all spare a thought for the aides, private secretaries, and Oxbridge-educated underlings of the firm, who just might be about to face a totally unprecedented event. Royal wives have gone rogue on the page before, but I would wager they could all pale in comparison if Harry's wife decides to wholly unburden herself and hold forth. Well, I think that would be accurate, because much of it will be a revision of history, as seen through her jaundiced view of the prism of her narcissism. She is in perpetual victimhood, that believes that Kate made her cry, that she did not bully staff, that people drove her to the brink of suicide, and therefore you can expect what will be page after page of incorrect recollections, revision of history, and smearing lies. She's done it before, she'll do it again, because her narcissism makes her believe that it's real. She doesn't recognise her lies. Her narcissism won't let that happen. The Duchess of Sussex appears to have made her position on returning to the United Kingdom and have anything to do with the House of Windsor very clear, skipping both the coronation and not joining Harry for his brief charity foray on home soil last month. So here we would have a woman who has been put through the truly bizarre ringer of royalty, who has publicly shared more about her suffering than anyone who came before, and who would seem to have little, if any, interest in persevering her relationship with her in-laws. Add it all up, and what could you get? Kablooey, a possible page-turner of a purging of every slight, every hurt, and every time the Duchess picked up the wrong fork for partridge. It could be an insider account like no other ever in history. In actual fact, it'll probably be very boring, because all it will be is a whinge fest of this person did this and didn't give me my own way, and therefore I'm complaining about them, over and over and over and over again. Some of you have been entertained by my piss take of funding freedom finding dollars. If you'd like to experience more of that, just go to the Knowledge Vault. That was Harry's wife's diaries, published by the improbably named plastic-faced lieutenant Omid Scobie. If she writes a memoir, you can expect not only more of the same, i.e. it was fucking dull, save from the capacity that it enabled to take the piss out of it, but also it'll just be a long, long list of complaints. It won't tell you anything particularly interesting. It'll just all be about the Duchess of Bland. If Harry's wife does go down this path, she would be far from the first royal wife to put Mont Blanc to paper. In 1956, fellow exile Wallis Simpson, the Duchess of Windsor, wrote, "The heart has its reasons." In the early 90s, Diana, Princess of Wales, fed Andrew Morton tape-recorded answers to his questions, ferried by bicycle by her former flatmate, from Kensington Palace to the Royal Scribe. The resulting 1992 book was a thunderbolt that rocked the palace far more than any of the Nazi bombs that had hit it during World War II. Here was the supposed future queen revealing that life inside the royal family was so horrible she had tried repeatedly to commit suicide. Today, it's hard to express just how breathtakingly cataclysmic this book was, like finding out that Cinderella had actually been held captive by Prince Charming. Then in 1996 came Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York's My Story. In 2011, she followed that up with Finding Sarah. In later interviews, she revealed the monumental psychological toll being married to a member of the royal family had taken, resulting in a breakdown after the end of her marriage to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. Fergie was in such a bad way that friends were concerned she might harm herself, she revealed in 2016. There was a moment when I did not want to come out of the room. One of my good friends, who was looking after me, she did think every time she came into the room that I would have committed suicide. When Harry's wife told Oprah Winfrey in 2021, I just didn't want to be alive anymore. She became the third royal wife in modern history to have been driven to suicidal thoughts by her palace tenure. The difference there, however, is that in the case of Harry's wife, this was done by way of a pity play, driven, of course, by the victimhood instilled by her narcissism. In 1994, King Charles cooperated with journalist Jonathan Dimbleby for an authorised biography in which he painted his parents, the late Queen and Prince Philip, as neglectful and who largely abandoned him. This, of course, is the lack of control environment that Charles' own narcissism was created in, along with the genetic predisposition that was passed to him by his late father. Philip obliquely fired back in an interview with The Telegraph, saying, "I've never discussed private matters, and I don't think the Queen has either. Very few members of the family have." However, all of these were done with the handbrake, if you will, of the late Queen in place. Diana, Fergie, and Charles only went so far, all of them having repeatedly expressed their deep respect for Her late Majesty. Even when Harry decided to start writing Spare in April 2021, the Queen was very much alive, and there is every chance it could have come out while she was still ruling the roost and the Bendix mint chocolate box, which is to say, he wrote his tome knowing that his Gan-Gan might read it. So what could a book written now by Harry, without any of the emotional curbs or guardrails that Her late Majesty represented, look like? A book written by a duke no longer able to wield his HRH and who has been bluntly disregarded by his family. which is to say, what do Harry and Harry's wife have left to lose? Well, in actual fact, for Harry, what he'll end up doing is writing what she tells him to do, as she puppets him once again, her hand wedged up his yitter, motivating him to respond and write based upon what she tells him. Elsa continues by explaining, after all, they've been evicted from Frogmore Cottage, had their attempts to hold the firm to account ignored wholesale by the institution, and Harry's recent request to stay one night in one of Windsor Castle's 52 royal and guest bedrooms was declined. Brutal. Meanwhile, with their podcasting careers at standstill and no new Netflix series confirmed, books have proven to be one very successful avenue for the duo. The Duchess's children's book, The Bench, reached the top of the New York Times bestseller list, only because Oprah bought thousands of copies, which have then remained in storage ever since. And The Duke's Spare broke the Guinness World Records for the fastest-selling non-fiction in history, again subject to some marketing manipulation, although it's to be said that there was more interest in his book than The Bench of Stench. It has to be said that while they may be writing books, that is not to say they are necessarily writing autobiographies. Maybe Harry's working on one about attracting hummingbirds and hedge maintenance. Their Monteshitshow estate looks like it has quite a few, and Harry's wife is penning some self-helpery full of Rumi quotes and cod psychology. Adding weight to this possibility is that the Sussexes making an about-face and going back down the royal family warpath would be risky, potentially further eroding their support base in the United States and reinforcing the perception in some quarters that they are overprivileged whingers. To my mind, that's not going to stop her. The temptation to settle scores is too great, and her narcissism will drive her to do so. Of course, with collateral consequences, but her narcissism doesn't care about that. Thus, the suggestion is that Harry's wife is penning a book, and it'll be explosive. It's highly likely that this is going to emerge, and it will just be a device for her to settle scores, once again, naturally driven by her narcissism. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.